Right now, you are bleeding your most valuable asset because you cannot control your biological urge to react. When a crisis hits or a rival attacks your position, society tells you to act immediately. You have been programmed to believe that whoever speaks the loudest and moves the fastest wins the negotiation. They lied to you. The 1% use a completely different terrifying weapon to absorb power: absolute stillness. If you do not learn to master tactical inaction today, you will spend the rest of your life as a predictable pawn in other people's games. Shut this video off if you want to keep reacting emotionally to every minor threat, or stay to learn the dark psychology of standing completely still and watch your enemies destroy themselves. We are biologically hardwired to respond to friction with kinetic energy. For millions of years, if a predator appeared in the wild, the human animal had only two choices: fight or flight. Both require massive expenditures of physical and mental resources. Today, the predators are no longer hiding in the jungle. They are sitting in boardrooms, sending aggressive emails and manufacturing corporate drama. Yet your primitive brain still triggers the exact same cortisol response. When a client threatens to leave or a coworker insults you, you feel the burning biological necessity to force a solution. You rush to defend yourself. You overexplain your position. You offer discounts and compromises. You falsely assume that doing something is inherently better than doing nothing. This is a fatal strategic error. Reaction is the ultimate confession of vulnerability. When you react to chaos, you validate its existence. You give it oxygen. You show your opponent exactly what your triggers are, how much endurance you have, and precisely what it takes to break your composure. Elite operators view the world through a completely different psychological lens. They understand that most problems in the modern world do not require a forceful intervention. In fact, most problems are traps designed to make you overextend yourself. When you master the discipline of standing still, you stop playing the game on their terms. You force the chaos to crash against an impenetrable wall of silence. Why reacting destroys your strategic position? To understand the lethal flaw of the direct response, we must study one of the most brilliant displays of tactical inaction in military history. In both the 19th and 20th centuries, the Russian Empire faced the two greatest, most unstoppable military machines the world had ever seen: the armies of Napoleon Bonaparte and the panzer divisions of Nazi Germany. Both invading forces were built on speed, overwhelming momentum, and the expectation of a direct clash. They wanted the Russians to build a wall at the border. They wanted a head-to-head fight where their superior tactics and brute force would secure a rapid victory. The Russians refused to give them what they wanted. They understood that meeting an overwhelming force with a direct reaction was military suicide. Instead of protecting their borders rigidly, the Russians deployed a strategy of radical withdrawal. They stepped back. They retreated deep into their own interior, destroying their own crops and burning their own villages along the way. They stood still in the frozen heart of their country. This infuriated the invading armies. The French and the Germans kept pushing forward, desperate to force a decisive battle. By refusing to react, the Russians weaponized the environment itself. They allowed the enemy to march thousands of miles away from their supply lines. They let the brutal, unforgiving winter do the fighting for them. The invaders were not defeated by the Russian army. They were defeated by their own aggressive momentum. They starved, they froze, and they collapsed under the weight of their own offensive. When you rush to defend yourself in business or in life, you are the invading army. You are burning your finite capital trying to force a victory against a target that refuses to engage. The elite do not waste their energy in pitched battles. They withdraw, they stand still, and they let their enemies freeze to death in a landscape of their own making. The psychology of tactical inaction. Silence and stillness are not the absence of strategy. They are the highest forms of psychological warfare. When you refuse to move, you strip your opponent of their navigational tools. The great strategist Saul Alinsky noted that if you push a negative hard enough and deep enough, it will eventually break through into its counterside. Every positive has a negative, and every negative has a positive. When you stand still, you force the aggressor to carry the entire weight of the interaction. Consider the terrifying effectiveness of Mahatma Gandhi during the campaign for Indian independence. Gandhi did not fight the British Empire. The British Empire did all of the fighting, and as a mathematical consequence, all of the losing. Gandhi leaned into his physical weakness and exaggerated it. He marched to the ocean to collect salt in direct violation of British law, looking at the most powerful military on earth and silently challenging them to act. He placed the authorities in an impossible dilemma. If they attacked peaceful, unmoving citizens, they exposed themselves to the world as brutal tyrants. If they did nothing, they abdicated their authority. By deploying absolute, unyielding stillness, the military's enormous strength was completely neutralized. Its very usage became counterproductive. When an aggressive competitor or a toxic individual tries to provoke you, they are relying on your resistance. Your anger and your fear are the friction they need to maintain their balance. If you argue with them, you give them a surface to push against. If you deploy tactical inaction, you remove the wall. You let them swing their heavy sword at empty air. The momentum of their own strike will pull them off balance, sending them crashing to the floor while you remain completely untouched. How elite operators weaponize stillness. To weaponize stillness, you must separate your internal identity from your external circumstances. You must build what the Stoic philosophers called the inner citadel. In the 1960s, the top middleweight boxing contender Reuben "Hurricane" Carter was wrongly convicted of a horrific crime and sentenced to 3 life terms in a maximum security prison. It was a dizzying, traumatic fall from grace. Most men would have broken down. They would have raged at the guards, fought the system, or collapsed into deep depression. Carter did the exact opposite. He reported to prison wearing a $5,000 diamond ring and a tailored suit. He looked the warden in the eye and stated that while they had stolen his physical freedom, he would never surrender his mind. Carter refused to act like a prisoner. He would not eat prison food. He would not wear the uniform. He would not attend parole hearings. He would not grovel to reduce his sentence. He stood perfectly still in his identity as a free, innocent man. He spent every waking minute reading philosophy and law, studying his own case. Carter understood that reacting emotionally to his unjust imprisonment would only validate the power of his captors. He withdrew into his inner citadel. He became untouchable. No guard could break a man who refused to acknowledge the reality of the prison. It took 19 years to overturn the false verdict, but when Carter finally walked out, he did not even request an apology from the state. To ask for an apology would imply that they had taken something he valued. By mastering his internal stillness, Carter turned a concrete dungeon into a university. When you feel trapped by a bad career, a toxic environment, or an unfair situation, raging against the cage only exhausts your muscles. True power is deciding that the cage does not exist in your mind, and calmly engineering your exit in absolute silence. Letting the enemy overextend themselves. We falsely assume that moving forward is the only way to progress. We believe that if we are not actively pushing against a problem, we are losing. This is an illusion driven by ego. Sometimes staying put or even taking a step backward is the most ruthless way to advance. You must cultivate the humility to accept that brute force is the tool of the amateur. Jigoro Kano, the legendary founder of judo, stood barely 5 feet tall. He routinely defeated men who were massively larger and stronger than him. Observers were baffled by his technique. One defeated opponent remarked that trying to fight Kano was like trying to fight an empty jacket. Kano did not block strikes. He did not push against his opponent's chests. When a massive attacker charged him, Kano simply stepped out of the way and pulled the attacker in the exact direction they were already running. He used their own velocity as a weapon against them. He let their aggression do 90% of the work, applying just enough leverage to send them crashing into the ground. In your life, size, wealth, and power are often the birthing ground for fatal weakness. Companies and individuals who rely on brute force never develop true technique. They coast on their size until they meet someone who refuses to fight them head-on. When your boss makes an unreasonable demand, do not argue. Let the silence hang in the air until the sheer absurdity of their request becomes obvious to everyone in the room. When a rival attempts to publicly humiliate you, do not defend your honor. Look at them with a blank, clinical stare and let the audience witness their desperate lack of emotional control. Do not just do something, stand there. Let the foolish, the angry, and the insecure rush headfirst into the void. The ultimate Stoic mastery of detachment. The highest pinnacle of power is looking at a catastrophic crisis and deciding that it does not require your emotional participation. It is the mastery of the ancient concept of apatheia, not apathy, but a state of calm equanimity free from irrational disturbance. Near the end of his reign, the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius received devastating news. His most trusted general and closest friend, Avidius Cassius, had rebelled in Syria. Hearing a false rumor that the emperor was dying, Cassius declared himself Caesar and mobilized his troops to seize the throne. A normal ruler would have erupted in a paranoid rage. He would have dispatched assassins, executed the general's family, and bathed the empire in blood to secure his legacy. Marcus Aurelius did absolutely nothing. He did not panic. He actually kept the news a secret from his own troops to prevent them from becoming enraged on his behalf. He stood perfectly still. He decided he would march to Syria, capture Cassius, and do the unthinkable. He would forgive him. He would use the treason as an opportunity to show the world the right way to deal with civil war. But Marcus never got the chance. Because he delayed his reaction, the rebellion fractured. Cassius was assassinated by his own men just 3 months later. The obstacle destroyed itself. Marcus arrived in the province, refused to execute any conspirators, and pardoned the entire Senate. You must drop the illusion that every crisis demands your intervention. The people who control this world do not flinch at the first sign of danger. They let the ambitious, insecure masses exhaust themselves. They sit back perfectly insulated and they watch. Conserve your energy, guard your cognitive bandwidth, learn the terrifying, lethal art of tactical stillness, and watch how quickly the world bends to your silence. Time for brutal honesty. Look inward right now. When you face a sudden crisis or an aggressive opponent, do you panic and force a solution, or do you have the psychological restraint to stand completely still and let the obstacle destroy itself? Defend your position in the comments below.